So we gather today on meaningful ground in the heart of London and in the heart of heritage. This is not just an event, it's a living conversation between past and present, between Sudan and the United Kingdom, between memory and hope. We mark 70 years of independence, and with it we honour partnership woven through time. In archaeology, art, education and enduring respect. Today we celebrate not only what is again preserved, but what lives and breathes among us. The crafts, the coffee, the calligraphy, the music, the stories, the heartbeat of Sudan, here with you. It's now my honour to invite to the stage His Excellency, Ambassador Babakir El-Amin, Head of Mission of the Embassy of the Republic of Sudan in London, to deliver his opening remarks.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friend of Sudan, good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is a great pleasure to welcome you to this afternoon to the Carpenter Halls here in the historic city of London. I sincerely thank you for joining us at this important moment for Sudan-UK cultural partnership, at a time when culture, memory, and heritage matter more than ever. As we stood for the national anthem of Sudan and the UK, of the United Kingdom, we were reminded that independence is not a merely date in history. It is an ongoing responsibility to protect identity, safeguard memory, and ensure that a nation's story is shared by its own people, while remaining open to the world. In this respect, Sudan's independence in 1956 was not an end, but a continuation of an intellectual conversation on how to nurture our cultural diversity while strengthening our national unity. This event is intended as a modest contribution to that ongoing discourse. Cultural partnership between Sudan and the United Kingdom has always extended beyond archaeology and museum galleries. It has lived in books, classrooms, studios, everyday encounters. We remember with gratitude figures such as Griselda al-Tayyib, Peter Abrington, and Professor Shibrien, whose great contribution embody the spirit of Sudan-UK friendship and cultural cooperation. We are also displaying work by the towering artistic figure, Dr. Rashid Diab, alongside those of young Sudanese artists, reminding us that Sudanese culture is living, contemporary, and confidently engaged with the world. Heritage, after all, is not about artifacts, it is about people and memory. In this regard, we deeply appreciate the support of the British Council and the Cultural Protection Fund, as well as Michael and Dr. Helen Mallinson through Safeguarding Sudan Living Heritage Project, an outstanding contribution to the documentation and preservation of Sudan's diverse culture. Michael's innovative Peace Tent project, which he designed and supervises across different cities in Sudan to showcase the richness of Sudanese culture while promoting peace and social harmony, is especially timely given the country's current circumstances. Michael was also instrumental in organizing this event. So Michael and Helen, thank you very much for dedication and commitment.
Thousand years of Sudanese history and cultural heritage in the time available. So I'm just going to share some highlights with you. Sudan's cultural history is illustrated by a wealth of artifacts, first housed in the Gordon College and now in the Sudan National Museum, but also in its regional museums, global collections, and in dramatic archaeological sites. The collections in Sudan's museums range in date from the Stone Age to modern-day Islam. There are over 15 different national and regional museums across Sudan and more than 180 archaeological sites. 50 of these sites have been recorded recently in Darfur. There are also numerous heritage buildings, archives, photographic and film collections, and private collections. There are 2 UNESCO World Heritage Sites inscribed for their importance to cultural heritage, and there are more that are proposed on the tentative list.
How do we map heritage under threat? How do we document what is at risk of being lost? Dr. Stefania Malo, joined by Mr. Tahami Abul Qasim and Dr. Ahmed Muhtasim Abdullah Mahmoud from the University of Cambridge, will share their work on the Mason Project, a collaborative research mapping Sudan's archaeological landscape. Please welcome them.
Good afternoon. I am honored to be here with this audience today. It's actually a joy to present some of the work that we've been doing together, mainly with the National Corporation for Antiquity and Museums in Sudan. I will only briefly introduce this project, and I will allow my colleagues to do most of the speaking. I represent a project which involves a number of different countries in Africa. We received funding from a funding body which is called Arcadia to do a very ambitious project, which is to work with antiquities departments in different African countries to construct digital databases of their archaeological sites and monuments and heritage sites. Because in many African countries this information is still in books or forms in museums. It has not been put in a digital form. Why are we digitizing all of these sites and monuments? Because once these sites and monuments are in a digital form, we can put them in maps, and we can assist the work of our colleagues in various countries in Africa to monitor their sites, to know how they're distributed in those countries. If there are parts of the country where archaeological research hasn't been done for a long time, there may still be archaeological sites that were documented before or known by the local communities that we can continue adding onto these maps. As you've seen in the previous map, Sudan is one of the many countries where we are working, but we want to zoom in the work that we've been doing in Sudan itself. So we started in 2021, so it's already a few years ago, to have conversations with NCAM in Khartoum to start a collaboration agreement and work together to see how to find ways of recording Sudanese archaeological sites, and in particular filling gaps in the knowledge of the archaeology of Sudan that need to be filled. You've seen the wonderful presentation earlier by Julie Anderson. The most archaeological sites that are documented, as we know of, in Sudan are along the Nile Valley. But many of you may be coming from other parts of Sudan, and you still know that there are archaeological sites where you live, but they haven't been documented. So one of the things that we wanted to do is to start documentation in other areas of Sudan. After a long time of back and forth, we finally managed to sign an agreement with NCAM in Sudan just a few months before this latest war started. And so that, of course, changed the way in which we had to work together, because many of our archaeology colleagues actually moved out of Sudan, and a number of them are now in Egypt, some of them may be here, but we are still collaborating with them, and Tahami will speak to you about the work that we're doing at Jebel Barkal with colleagues there. So what do? We do this collection of archaeological sites, both using archival documents but also satellite imagery. But in particular, we work with our Sudanese colleagues on explaining what kind of techniques we are using to create this digital record of archaeological sites, and learning from one another and teaching these new digital techniques so that members of our community can create these records. I am going to give the word to Tahami, who is going to explain to you a little bit of the work that we do and take you through some of the work that we've done together in the past years.
Thank you, Stefania. Hello, everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So, I'm not going to go too deep in the principles of remote sensing, but we basically use satellite imagery so we use Google Earth Pro. We use satellite imagery to record the position of archaeological sites and map them whilst we are on the ground using global positioning system, and to find archaeological sites looking from above, to monitor threats and risk to the archaeological sites. So there's basically a collection of sites in Sudan from above. So I'm gonna ask you if you can identify any of those sites. Anyone? very famous sites.
There's a hand.
Yeah. That's correct. Yeah, those are the cemeteries of Bajrawiya, or Mary. And any volunteers? The second one, the bottom down there, it's the Great Enclosure in Musawarat. Here is Old Dungula, or Dungula Al-Ajuz. And the Great Temple of Amun in Jabal Barkal. Initial work was undertaken by my colleague Ed Burnett, who made significant progress using historical maps and publications to identify a large number of archaeological sites. So basically, in this case, remote sensing was used to relocate and assess the condition of sites mapped and described in the late 1930s and not visited by archaeologists for several decades, both income and international archaeologists. Due to the conflict in the region, we're talking about Darfur, some parts of Kurdistan as well, with some visits nevertheless by Ibrahim Muhammad Ahmad Ali in 2018, and an income team from Al-Fashir in 2021 and 2022. One example, the Arkell publication. So Arkell is one of the archaeologists who worked really early in Sudan, and he did some work around Tura and Jabal Marra, and another work also has been done by Ibrahim Musa Muhammad, the former income director in the area, who worked in the area of Mao, or Jabal Mao, which is part of the Tagabu Hills or Tagabu Range. So here, basically, this is the work of Ibrahim Musa Muhammad. So we used his PhD thesis so we relocated the area of which he conducted his work. And then slowly we started mapping a wide range of the area. So we covered the whole Tagabu Hills, or the whole Tagabu range, and significant number of archaeological sites were documented and assessed. So when we say legacy data, basically it's the material we gather from existing sources about the location and function of archaeological sites. Sources include everything from archaeological survey to project reports authored by credible and experienced professionals. So we get the publication, whether it's a book or a paper, and then we start extracting the data. And when we say extracting the data, that will include images, photos, relevant plans and maps. We put all of that in a spreadsheet, and then the data will go through a huge process from checking and auditing, the location finding, which is what we use in, that's why we use Google Earth, the historical maps, all the way until the data is ready and then uploaded to the Arches platform. So this is an example also for another legacy data, an archaeological survey done in Al-Ghul region, south of the 5th Nile Cataract in the River Nile State. So this data set was consists of 99 polygons. So we extracted all the information. So that's a published map we extracted from the article, and then we systematically surveyed around the area. As you can see here, over 10,000 sites were documented, and that includes cairns, contemporary occupation, habitation sites, Muslim cemeteries, and enclosures. So So now I'll give the opportunity to my colleague Ahmed to talk about monitoring the heritage site.
Thank you, Jahan. Assalamu alaikum. Hi, everyone. So I promise I will try and be simple. So I'm going to try and to speak a little bit practical on how we use remote sensing from above. So what do we mean by remote sensing? So simply, remote sensing is satellite images, and normally heritage professionals, when they go on the ground, they do the surveys using GPS, for example, or they use land survey techniques. So, and monitoring heritage sites from above is basically we use satellite images to do this. And this will enable us to do survey large areas. That means covering large, wide areas compared to land surveys. It allows us to do these surveys rapidly and more regularly compared to the land surveys. But also remote sensing and satellite images will allow us to visit remote areas, so for example deserts. And it also, in the case of conflict, for example, and inaccessible areas, remote sensing can be also quite important. Satellite images that covers that are taken in the same area, but they were taken in several days or several years, for example, and then we can compare the changes that happened in these land features. And this is what is basically known as change detection. So you can see some examples here. We have some building destruction that happened in Khartoum due to the conflict. We can see the Friendship Hall here, and you can see also the National Museum as well. Floods are also some of the threats that impacts heritage sites. So we can use remote sensing and satellite images to document the impact of natural phenomena such as floods. Agricultural intensification or agricultural expansion, it's an important economical source in Sudan, agriculture, definitely, but for heritage sites, it might be a source of threats. So unless care was taken, then this might be like quite threatening to heritage sites. Mining activities, we can see a lot of mining activities that is happening in Nahr al-Nil state and northern Sudan as well, and the Red Sea. And most of these areas, they are famous with heritage sites. So I guess comparing using remote sensing to document these impacts is also something that is quite important. I think here I will just try to be very brief and talk about one of the advanced remote sensing tools that I've been working on during my previous work at the University of Leicester, which is how do we use machine learning models, how do we use machine learning models to automate the process of analyzing these satellite images. So rather than just comparing two satellite images, but we can actually compare a series of satellite images to allow us to see and detect these threats. So we've developed this automated change detection tool, which is an interactive user-friendly tool that is provided for heritage professionals to allow them to document and understand the threats within their study areas. So the tool provides informed insights such as threat maps, threats statistics, so basically saying like how many sites are impacted by certain threats, so for example urban expansion or agricultural expansion. But it also, the tool is also automated, so once you program it, then it will generate all these results automatically. And we've worked quite a lot with heritage national authorities to develop these tools for their specific needs. And we are also considering training some heritage professionals from Sudan, from ANCAM, on how to use this tool. Currently, we are also working on developing this new digital heritage monitoring framework for Africa. And indeed, Sudan is going to be one of the areas that we're going to work on. I think that's it. And thank you very much for listening.
We now move into a space of spiritual reflection and unity. In Sudanese culture, Medih is more than music. It's a gathering of hearts in praise of Allah and reflection on the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. These devotional songs promote peace, togetherness, and the inward journey towards divine love, a timeless expression of Islamic spirituality that transcends borders and reminds us of our shared humanity. Let us now listen, reflect, and be uplifted.
Hey! ركبوا عوالي الهمم في جوف الدجى على صافنات العزم للريح تسبغ وغدا لسان الحال يصرح من بعد ما تلويحهم للعاشقين يشوق غطعوا مهام الحجب وأشرقت الكيان بنورهم والأرض تفرح بمرورهم تشرق الجنة الزهراء تشتهي قربهم والحور والولدان إليهم تعشق من خمرة التهليل صار شرابهم نزلوا على وادي المحبة رووا طوبى لهم نال السرور الأوفر الأعلى والحظ الشميخ الأسبق فبحقهم يا رب ابن مكاشفي وفقه للخيرات ومن لظى يعتقوا ثم الصلاة على النبي محمد والآل والصحب الكرام هم السبقوا ثم الصلاة على النبي محمد والآل والصحب الكرام هم السبقوا فاتحة يا آمين.
اللهم صل صلاة جلال وسلم سلام جمال على حضرة حبيبك سيدنا محمد واغشه اللهم بنورك كما غشيته سحابة التجليات فنظر إلى وجهك الكريم وبحقيقة الحقائق كلم مولاه العظيم الذي أعاده من كل سوء أمن يجير المجيب إذا طعاه أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء اللهم اكشف عن السودان السوء بما شئت وكيف شئت إنك على ما تشاء قدير اللهم ألف بين قلوبنا واجعلنا على قلب رجل واحد يا كريم يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم كما جمعتنا في هذا المحفل الجميل اجمعنا في الفردوس الأعلى مع النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين وحسن أولئك رفيقا اجعل هذه البلاد آمنة واجعل بلاد المسلمين كافة آمنة يا كريم يا أرحم الراحمين صلى الله على سيدنا محمد سيد الأولين والآخرين الفاتحة بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين.
حسبي ربي تجلى الله ما في قلبي إلا الله حسبي محمد صلى الله ما في إله إلا الله حسبي ربي تجلى الله ما في قلبي إلا الله يا محمد صلى الله لا إله إلا الله حسبي ربي تجلى محمد صلى الله لا إله إلا الله الله يا ربي إلا الله ما في ربي إلا الله محمد صلى الله لا إله إلا الله يا ربي تجلى الله ما في قلبي إلا الله.
I can't say I've ever seen Madih in London. That was amazing. It's really taken me back to Sudan, so thank you for that. Next we have a portrait of pioneering spirit. Griselda Tayyib was married to Professor Abdullah Tayyib and lived her life in Sudan, fully immersed herself in its culture and people. Through her paintings, she captured the beauty, warmth, and everyday life of Sudan, creating art that bridges Sudanese and British experiences and speaks to shared humanity. This short film celebrates her enduring legacy. Please watch.
أنا درست كلية الفنون في لندن في نهاية الحرب العالمية الثانية. بعد الواحد لازم يمشي لكلية التربية في جامعة لندن عشان يعمل سنة في تدريب التربية. هنا في هذا كلية التربية أخذت دكتوراه في طريق شنو؟ كان معي ابنين زملاء في قسم الفن، واحد اسمه جمال مبارك، الثاني اسمه عبد الرازق قبل الأطفال. عبد الرازق عزمني غدا في الداخلية بتاعته. اليوم عزمني غدا ده كان صدفة عيد ميلادي 21، فعرفني بعبد الله الطيب. كان ده جاء معنا من السودان، هو في قسم التربية، ابتدى يتكلم معي وأنا عليهم وسلونا جميلة، بس كنت يعني معجب بيهم من أول يوم.
And now let heritage resonate through melody. Please welcome the voice and soul of Muhammad Tawila.
And the energy it generated meant that when the RSF came and drove them out of Wad Medani, when they went to Kassala, you'd have thought this would have been enough. They'd been driven twice from their homes, that was going to be enough, but it wasn't. They gathered together and they said, the Wad Medani thing showed us that we can do this amazing thing together. Let's show that the community of Sudan can stand together. And in Wad Medani, they had refugees from Masria, they had people from Hawazma, they had people from Sabdarat, Handalat, Halanga, every group of Sudan was in Kassala, and they all came and said, we would like to try and build a peace garden and show that the Sudanese people can live together in peace. And they told us that's what they wanted. And thanks to Daniel and Steph and Stephen, I have to say thank you very, very much to them. They agreed, and I think they should stand up and be clapped, actually. They agreed, and Tanya, of course, as well, sorry. They agreed that we could use the fund that was going to be spent in the Khartoum on the Living Heritage Museum to help them build this peace garden. And so over the following 4 months, it only took 4 months, we went from being workshops in different local communities in the area, learning what their traditional crafts were, their arts were, bringing them all together, and then 18 different community groups came together over that 3-month period and built their traditional houses, brought their food, brought their culture, and people were amazed. We had Rashida sitting next to Sabdarat. We had people who the week before had been fighting in the souk, sitting next to each other sharing coffee. People did not even believe it was possible what they achieved, and I can only take my hat off to them because they did this. And they represented all the areas of Sudan, Western Sudan, Eastern Sudan, Central Sudan, Red Sea Sudan, and the focal point was a peace tent where they could come together and do their heritage performances. This is the gateway. As you can see, it says Peace Garden in Arabic, but in the shape of a dove. And this is the first opening events before the buildings were all finished in February last year, which the ambassador very kindly organised me to go and visit, so I say shukran to him again, and to the Minister of Culture, Al-Asir, for arranging that. So we were able to travel there and see this shared heritage. So you can see here Nuba dancers, Rashida Aswad, Sabdarat, Halanga, and this is the peace tent on the right here. So these are examples of what they did initially. They built these traditional houses, the Gatia, and then they bought their heritage and they decorated the inside with their heritages. And outside they had food, they had the different traditional music and dancing. And from that first initial stage, over the last 7 months, they've turned those initial displays into permanent exhibitions. Here you see permanent exhibitions. We lost 500 objects out of the Ethnographic Museum in Khartoum when it was burnt to the ground. We now have 700 objects added to the collections from this garden in just 7 months. So even though we know those objects have been destroyed, the new collection is better understood. We know where it's from, we know what it's used for, we know what it's called, and we know what it's how. So in fact, the energy that went into creating this peace garden has actually brought alive the Ethnographic Museum. This is a Nuba house with the agricultural farming exhibition. This is the Western Sudan Gatia, which has got a musical exhibition. So one of the things that we did during the last 7 months, British Council and various local Nafia organisations held 100 peace activities, from anti-hate speeches to theatre weeks to painting weeks to craft weeks to, it went on. And this is a little craft training music workshop in which older gentlemen taught their families how to make musical instruments. And Dafala, who ran the musical museum in Omdurman, lost all of his heritage. So just moving on, this is the Shafat. This is the Nubian house. This is the Suwakin house they built in just under 3 months from scratch. This is it finished and turned into an art museum showing the finest qualities and heritages of Sudan, showing that actually it's not just baskets and things that one thing as market products, but actually Sudan produces beautiful craft objects. These are the nomads' houses. And this is A year later, those houses, those tents were all, of course, worn out, but last month they came back and rebuilt them again for the opening, the second opening, when we handed over the garden to the people of Sudan. So this is just, they built an oil different dances, and they actually came together and danced one dance, celebrating Sudan as one joint heritage, which nobody thought they could do, but they did it. But then since then we've had over 100 events, including the Bija Congress took place there, Women's Day, Children's Activities Day. The tent has actually worn out and is now being redone in the last 7 months by the British Council support. And this is the people who did the work, of course. The amazing artists, Tariq, Al-Fatah, Hawda Osman, all these, Ahmed and Asad, photographers, filmmakers. We were not able to go there more than twice, once in February and once in December. The whole thing was run by the Sudanese team. It was driven by their own motivation and their own projects, and this is what they really wanted to do. And that's our lucky day last December when we made down to see it and we saw the team for the first time in 9 months, so that was lovely. And that's when the garden was handed over to the local tourism department in Kassala, who are now running it with the community heritage activity. So from this, the huge energy that came from creating this, 3 new projects have started. One is the rebuilding of Jebel Barkal Museum, from being a few storage rooms into a major gallery. The Jebel Barkal Museum is now, as Tomi can tell you, as big as the National Museum. I mean, they've done an amazing job. They built a peace garden for their activities, and then inside they built this new gallery, which is a community gallery for traditional heritages, and they're hoping over the next 6 months to start doing similar kind of heritage exhibitions as they had in Kassala. The Commonwealth Heritage Fund has helped an emergency situation that has developed in the Taj al-Sir Mosque in Suakin. The Taj al-Sir Mosque, which is one of the major Sufi mosques in Sudan, was destroyed by earthquakes and weather and rain and various things, mostly fell down. And in 3 months, the team from Kassala went there and rebuilt the whole thing. I mean, I don't know how to say it, but that's the collapsed state. This is the formwork that went in to hold the building up while they were falling down. Where we have the governance of the Red Sea and the local builders all learning the skills of training and skill making, and the local students did all the decoration plastering, and this is the rebuilt police station they're about to return into a community heritage centre as well. So finally, what's the future? The Ethnographic Museum was sadly burnt to the ground about 7 months ago, and taking the ideas and the energy of Kassala Peace Garden and working with the communities in Khartoum and communities from outside of Sudan, outside of Khartoum, to rebuild it as a new heritage garden, peace garden, to replace the old Living Heritage Ethnographic Museum. That is hopeful. And finally, Helen is going to say a few more sensible words.
Yeah, over time. But luckily, I don't have to say very much because if you have a phone in front of you or in your pocket, on your table, you see some cards, and they have a QR code on them. And that QR code, if you photograph it, it will take you to all of our social media, YouTube and websites and so on. Because when the war started, before the war, we were seriously low profile. Beyond digitizing the collections. After the war, we made a home on the internet. So we have it, and that became the place to regather collections, to put teams together, to network, and to build a new set of resources, while Michael and putting back venues together in Sudan. So we were into Sudan and in the cloud. The cards on the table are part of the educational resources that we've been developing. Don't steal them. They're all downloadable, or will be soon, in sets. Actually, in a miniature museum of the kind of cross-section of Sudan's living heritage. And there are books that have been made from all over Sudan. It's a very, very rich resource now that you cannot claim that Sudanese living heritage is invisible. It's very, very visible. Thank you.
Thank you. So, heritage is not only carried by elders, it's claimed and reimagined by the young. We now welcome Yusra Yindil, steeped in a deep passion for English literature, Latin, and ancient Greek. Yet her voice remains unmistakably Sudanese. Tonight she shares her voice with us, and we look forward to witnessing the masterpiece she is about to unfold. Please welcome Yusra Yindil.
Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum, and I hope you're all enjoying the event so far. Sorry. I just wanted to start by saying a few words which can give some context to my contribution. So the last time I went to Sudan was in 2017 when I was 6, and I'm looking up at the sky at night. And I also get to do a really similar thing here in London all the time because I live here. So that got me thinking it can give you like a small sense of familiarity and a fond memory of an experience that I think we've all had at some point. There is a cold, hard ledge, curtains drawn aside at the trees, standing tall and geriatric with limbs that extend off into small, winding silhouettes, stripped so bare it's hard to believe that they ever bore leaves. The air smells of damp foliage and dew and the bustle of city at night. Road. And far away, and rust creeping up its feet. A court of plaster walls and a cool, tiled grey floor, with vibrant hues of. The wind howls and whirs sand up into eyes, hair, skin, and everything it touches, lingering long after it travels across land and sea, perhaps to the cold, hard ledge, or anywhere else it may find itself. Thank you.
Wasn't she amazing? Well done, Yusra. Okay, so how do we remember? How do we ensure memory survives conflict and time? Professor Marilyn Deegan of King's College London directs the Sudan Memory Project, an ambitious effort to record and preserve Sudanese heritage for generations to come. Please welcome Professor Deegan.
I wonder if, like Julie Anderson, I could have something to stand on. I do like to see you all. I feel honoured and humbled to be here today. And I'm just sitting here absorbing everything and thinking of all the wonderful presentations that have been today, starting with the ambassadors, welcome to us all. I'm reminded constantly that heritage and culture are the glue that hold communities and societies together. And I think Michael has beautifully demonstrated that, talking about their living heritage. But what we're talking about, and I'm going to be presenting here with my colleague Sarah Al-Naga, what we're talking about is the kind of heritage that is held in cultural institutions, in archives, in libraries, and in private homes. And you'll see some of the projects we're working on that involve going into private homes. Sudan Memory started through an act of war. In 2013, the libraries in Timbuktu were under attack, and it was feared that valuable, precious manuscripts had been destroyed. That very courageous librarians had snuck them out before the destruction happened. But this alerted colleagues in Sudan, in the Sudanese Association for Archiving Knowledge, to the danger that cultural preservation poses, the danger of things that are in archives and libraries that could be attacked, or also in the context of countries like Sudan, where there's other forms of degradation can happen with heat, sand, dust, etc. And so they contacted Durham University, the Sudan Archive at Durham University, to ask if would digitisation perhaps be a way of preserving Sudanese culture and cultural heritage for the future. Now, digitisation is never as good as having the originals, but it's a lot better than having nothing. And so Sudan Memory was born. So from 2013 to 2017, we had lots of meetings, planning, and lots of visits to archives and thinking about what it was, what could we do, how could we do something to digitise a large quantity of Sudanese cultural heritage. Until 2017, we didn't have any funding. So here are what the aims of Sudan Memory are. This is some of the, what is it? It's not working. So you can see on the right some of the materials that are kept in archives in Sudan. And so the first job with a lot of things was actually to sort things out and work out what was there. So what were our main aims? Well, they were to safeguard cultural heritage through digitisation and archiving. Doing so in collaboration with private, governmental and institutional archives. And we wanted to create a widely accessible platform to display the content and give access, wide, free access for educational and non-commercial purposes. So initially in 2017, we were funded by the British Council's Cultural Protection Fund, who actually made us another grant later on in 2019-2020. We were then also funded by the Alif Foundation. And during the war, we've been funded by Cultural Emergency Response. And for this last year, we've been funded by the Arcadia Fund. Our partners were many and various, including the Sudanese Association for Archiving Knowledge, who were our main partners, but also the National Records Office, Sudan Radio and TV, NCAM. Nile Valley University was one of our key partners and in fact is still working digitising. The University of Khartoum and universities elsewhere. Sudanese Archaeological Research Society at the British Museum, and individuals who contributed content in Abri, in Apra, in Khartoum, in the Berber region, in the Red Sea region. And we've had experts and individuals, technical help, editors, translators, all over the world, people in America, people in Germany, people in France, people in England, contributing for the last 8 years now. What have we achieved? 250,000 digital images created with full metadata in Arabic and English. And this includes documents, manuscripts, photographs, film, objects. Even since the war started, we've had ongoing scanning at Nile Valley University, funded by Cultural Emergency Response. And they've been sending roving teams in the Berber, Nile Valley and Red Sea regions. And they've created, even during the war, 150,000 new images. And we've actually developed this concept that we call good enough digitisation. We started off with this council of perfection. We were going to have the best equipment that we're going to work into the future using materials like this. Nile Valley did a 60-minute film on the history of Sudan's railways, which is very interesting, and lots to the benefit of digitisation in institutions, in cultural institutions, in Sudan and in other countries. We've got films, manuscripts, rare books. This is a rather charming photograph on the right. That's the guy who kicked the winning goal when Sudan won the Africa Cup of Nations in 1970, going up the Nile on a boat, and there's a truck on the boat with all the equipment on it, and they're going up the Nile to visit villages, small archives, families, to capture valuable materials from manuscripts. There's a lot of very valuable Islamic manuscripts on the going through the Berber region, because it's on. with families and with small archives. On the left, you'll see Wabi, our colleague at Nile Valley, who's actually giving people our assurances that their materials are safe with us, that we don't assert any copyright in the materials, that we're not going to take the materials anywhere, we just want to scan it to preserve it. So that's actually try and distill what we've been doing, what worked, what didn't work, what mistakes did we make, what successes did we have, and how can we actually encapsulate this, and it's going to need to be recaptured, rebuilt. One of the things we've realised is that an awful lot of what we've captured museum in Khartoum, we actually managed to copy we photographed every single example of the and we think that we may have the only copy that exists of that. So our future is very important. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah to talk about what you can find.
طيب, assalamu alaikum. So I'm going to talk about the practical side of the Sudan Memory website. So when you've got the picture, but it's equally important to have the metadata to explain about what the picture is, and most importantly is for when you need to find anything, or if it's in a big collection, you need to have good metadata in order to dig it up or for people to find this scan or image. So sudanmemory.org, and that is one of the ways you can find images relating to independence. So immediately Sudan Memory, I mean, there's different ways to look at it. So you could look, for example, you could put in 1956, it would bring up everything related to 1956, all the 40. So, for example, this is a picture of independence from within Parliament, where independence is declared. And again, this is another this is another one from the Dar al-Wasaiq, from the newspaper collection. So there were hundreds of newspapers was scanned, and the metadata was entered. This is a picture of independence celebration collection, which is on Sudan Memory. And what's interesting is you can see the military uniforms of the day. So this was around in the 60s. And then this is from the collection of وبعدين طبعا دي بتذكرني بالأغنية بتاعت المرحوم حسن خليفة العبراوي يا غريب سوق معاك ولدك لملم عددك, which means it's a song, a famous song around independence time from the late Hassan, says, stranger, gather your belongings, take your kids and go home. And thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, esteemed representative of the British Council, the British Museum, the Cultural Protection Fund, the University of Cambridge and King's College London, respected Sudanese artists, academics, colleagues and friends, members of the Sudanese community here in the United Kingdom, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. I extend my sincere gratitude to the Embassy of the Republic of Sudan in London for this honor, and for inviting me to speak today as part of the Sudan Cultural Day, on the occasion of the 70th anniversary of Sudan's independence. It is deeply meaningful to stand before you, surrounded by institutions and individuals who continue to engage with Sudan's culture, heritage, and people. During one of the most challenging periods in our country's modern history, my journey, like so many other Sudanese journeys, begins in Sudan. a country of extraordinary diversity, resilience, and a historical depth. Sudan is not a modern invention, nor a peripheral society shaped solely by external factors. It is one of the oldest continuously inhabited regions in the world, with organized states, cultures, and political systems stretching back more than 6,000 years. Long before colonial borders were drawn, Sudan was a civilizational crossroads, linking the sub-Saharan Africa with the wider Sahel region, the Nile Valley, Red Sea with the Mediterranean world. It was a space of movement, exchange, and power. Plant cities, monumental architecture, and a centralized state. This was followed by the Kingdom of Kush, whose rulers actually governed Egypt at the 25th dynasty, making Sudan not a periphery of civilization, but a center of imperial authority. At Merowe, Sudan developed its own written scripts, rulers, the Kandakas. More than 200 pyramids still stand in Sudan today, a material reminder that history did not merely pass through Sudan, but history was made there. This depth actually matters, because it reminds us that what we are witnessing today is in agriculture, water, livelihood, and humanitarian response. Alongside farmers, displaced families, and communities navigating crisis with dignity and strength. Throughout this work, I done but to serve it better. Being selected for the Chevening Scholarship, funded by the United Kingdom government through the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, was a moment of trust, truth, and responsibility. As a current scholar, I remain in the process of learning, questioning, and refining my understandings. Yet, already, this experience has reached itself an act of commitment, a form of careful preparation to retain with sharper tool, stronger ethics, and a clear purpose. Even before completing my studies, this journey has already shaped me in an important ways. It has expanded my intellectual horizons without disconnecting me from home. It has connected. That opportunity carries responsibility. Responsibility to represent Sudan with integrity, responsibility to retain value through knowledge, policy, something quiet yet deeply symbolic occurred actually. For the first time in a long while, a civilian passenger aircraft landed to the world, to humanity, and to history. A message that Sudan is patient and resilient, that it is enduring, steadfast, and how to survive. And just as that plane crossed all the skies and found its ground again, Sudan too will learn how to rise. This is both and the strength of a great and heroic people. As Sudan marks 70 years of independence, we are reminded that independence is not only political, it is intellectual, it is cultural, and it is moral. Sudan's future will be shaped by people equipped with knowledge, values, and deep sense of duty. By those who understand both local realities and global systems, and who can translate learning into service. This is why international partnership in education matters. Not as an end in themselves, but as part of a longer journey of becoming. To young Sudanese listening today, whether here in the United Kingdom or watching from afar, your learning matters, your commitment matters. Even before the journey feels complete, you do not need to have all the answers yet. What matters is the intention to serve, to return value, and to stay connected. As I continue my studies, I do it with humility and clarity. I remain a student, I remain a learner, and I remain deeply Sudanese. I'm grateful for the United Kingdom government and the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office for this opportunity. Grateful to the Embassy of the Republic of Sudan for this platform. I'm grateful to Sudan for shaping responsibility I will carry forward. This journey is not the end, it is preparation. Because Sudan is not a temporary crisis. Sudan is a great destiny and a great history. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mazab. I think it's time for another break. So if you didn't get a chance to see it the first time, please enjoy another opportunity to explore and wonder and connect and reflect at our exhibition. We'll have more drinks, more snacks, so please enjoy and be sure to be back by 5:45. See you soon. Okay, we start? Okay. Welcome back, everyone. This is our final section of the day. Thank you. Okay, heritage lives not only in stones, but in verse. We now welcome the voice of Imru Bakari, a filmmaker, writer, and poet. One of his passions is preserving Africa's film heritage, and Sudan's film archive is an important component of that. The poems he'll read were written recently in solidarity with the people of Sudan. Please again extend a warm welcome to Imru Bakari.
Ambassador and artists. As has been said, the poems I'm going to read is a sequence of short poems with the Sudanese people. And I write these poems in solidarity against the long struggles, in support of the long struggles against tyranny, terrorism. I also want to give thanks to those who have gone before me. I like to start my readings by giving thanks to those who have gone before me, particularly the poets, the storytellers. And I want to preface these poems, which are titled Sudanese Postcards of 2025, Received by Photograph. I write them in memoriam to a great friend of mine, passed away, Hussein Sharif, painter, poet, and filmmaker. And I want to preface these poems with a few lines from one of my earlier poems, which says, "How do you keep things together when the soul is already ripped apart?" Zainab, Ruth, speak of hyena voices stretched on sickle blade. And I'd just like to end, as I started with a preface, I'd like to just end with an epilogue, a preface to another moment, from a few lines going from one of my earlier poems, which says, "History does not repeat itself. It hangs around the neck like a stone or a talisman." Shukran.
رب العالمين أشرف الخلق سيدنا صلى الله عليه وسلم وإلى روح الاثنين سيدنا مولانا الإمام الحسن سيدنا مولانا الإمام الحسين سيدنا أبو بكر الصديق.
In the spirit of time, we'll honour a selection of contributors on stage now, representing the wider Dr. Stefania Merlot on behalf of Cambridge University, Professor Marilyn Deegan on behalf of King's College, Dr. Julie Alison Tweed on behalf of Book Aid, Michael and Helen Mallinson on behalf of Safeguarding Sudan Living Heritage, and Kinsey Abdullah and Dr. Ahmed. Another round of applause, please. Thank you. Numbi Arts, Kinsey Abdullah and Dr. Ahmed Jabir. And Dr. Julie Anderson on behalf of the Sudan Archaeological Society. Thank you. We now honour pioneering. These cultural contributors not only shine their work and their light in the UK and in Sudan, but internationally. To the stage, Abdullah Bandar, Dr. Imru Bakari, and Abdul Baghi Ali on behalf of the Sufism Group. Last but not least, I call Peter Abrington, and I have an extra script here. So, Peter Abrington, author of Watch Your Step Khawaja. Peter Abrington was a British teacher who spent years in Sudan and continued to visit throughout his life. In his memoir, Watch Your Step Khawaja, he shares his Sudanese experience with warmth, respect and humility, offering a meaningful bridge of Sudanese understanding between Sudanese and British culture. I'll hand over to his son.
Sahabat Sayyidati, Sadati, Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honour and privilege to be with you today to celebrate the 70th anniversary of Sudan's independence. And it's an honour to accept this award on behalf of my late father, Ustaz Peter Abrington, who taught in Sudan in the 50s and 60s. My father's first sight of Africa was Port Said in Egypt in 1953. He was 18 years old, sailing on a troop ship bound to the Far East, where he would go on to do his national service before going to university. Dad was brought up to love his country and the British Empire, seeing it as a force for good in the world. And he remembered being puzzled at the time about why so many countries in Africa and elsewhere in the world wanted to strike out on their own as independent nations. Thankfully, by the time he first arrived in Sudan, 5 years later, landing at the Wad Sayyidna aerodrome, his outlook had changed dramatically. As a student in Cambridge, through his involvement in the moral realignment movement, now known as Initiatives of Change, he felt called to change his studies from classics to Arabic, to help build a bridge of trust between Britain and the Arab world, following the tragedy of the Suez Crisis of 1956. And that decision would lead him 2 years later to Sudan, where he would live for the next 8 years. He came to the country not as an ambassador, a government advisor, or a priest, a vocation that he seriously considered. Instead, Awad Sati, Sudan's first ambassador to the UK, told him that what the country really needed from Britain at its moment of independence was teachers. And so he turned up in Port Sudan Secondary School in 1958 with humility, a lesson he learnt early on after being publicly proved wrong on a finer point of English grammar by one of his Sudanese students. After admitting in front of the class that he had been wrong, he gained confidence and was a widely admired and respected teacher. It's hard to know how effective his classes were. I don't know if there are any students of his in attendance. He loved to tell the story of one day in Khartoum in the 1980s, encountering one of his old students who said, "Ustaz Peter, do you remember me? You had teached me English." But beyond his work in the classroom, Dad always held dear to the vision he had been given and sought to play his part in building that bridge of trust and friendship between Britain and Sudan. After leaving the country in 1966, he went on to organise many student exchanges between universities in the two countries. And through these exchanges and personal friendships, he sought to play his part in building those bridges of trust. He always sought to encourage the many wonderful Sudanese nation builders and peacemakers he met along the way, both during his time in the country and on his many subsequent visits, the last of which was in 2018. Despite his many treasured experiences in Sudan, he never really wanted to publish a My Incredible Lifestyle memoir of reminiscences to be forced on the Sudanese or anybody else he could thrust a copy into the hands of. So it truly was one of the great joys of his last years when family members of Dawood Abdul Latif, who's the governor of Kassala province he had met while invigilating exams in the 1950s, arranged for a book of his photos and reminiscences to be published in 2017 by the Dal Group. It was clear attending the book launch that year with him in Khartoum that a large part of my father's soul truly found rest in the country, in his walks beside the Nile, in the markets, and above all in the home of his dear friends, such as Ahmed al-Mahdi and Mohammed al-Murtada Mustafa al-Mishli, to name just two of the dozens, hundreds, thousands of friends he made along the way. The publication of that book under the title of Ya Hawaja Imal Hasabak, or Watch Your Step Hawaja, was seen by his friends as a recognition of his service to the country. Yet Dad saw it much more than that, as a celebration of the many joys that Sudan and the Sudanese had granted him during his life, and for God's wonderful faithfulness 60 years on from that call he had received in Cambridge University. In that spirit, this award that I'm receiving on his behalf is a recognition of my father's service to Sudan in its early years of independence and beyond. Yet more than that, ladies and gentlemen, it is a celebration of the joys that the country and its people have given to my father and my family, the friendships and the relationships which endure today. May those friendships and may that bridge of trust between the two countries continue to live on for the next 70 years and beyond, through the good times and the challenging times. Shukran jazilan, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
To every community, exhibitor, musician, volunteer and advocate here today, your contribution is deeply valued. Your certificates of appreciation will be presented to you as you leave the hall this evening. Let's offer a round of applause for all who have made this Sudanese Cultural Day possible. Our next performance carries a story woven deep into the fabric of Sudanese culture. This is the bridal dance, a celebration of beauty, tradition, and new beginnings. The bride, adorned in handcrafted accessories, steps forward not just in splendor, but as the central figure in a cherished rite of passage. Her dance marks the joyful start of her journey from single life to married life. It follows the jirtik ceremony, a special blessing given by older women to both the bride and groom, a tradition carried with honor and wisdom by women alone. Today, this dance is more than a performance. It's a living thread of memory, joy, and community. Fun fact, the Sudanese jirtik ceremony was officially inscribed on UNESCO's representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity only last December. Let's welcome this celebration of heritage, life, and continuity.